What if I told you that the worst career decision you can make is probably chasing that promotion you don't want or don't even need? And what if success looks less like being a manager and then a manager's manager and more like excelling in what you love? Welcome back to Bookshelf to Boardroom podcast series. And today I'm joined by a very, very special guest. His name is Johansson-Stockford. And he has been a recruiter for around 10 years across sectors, including the high stakes ones like tech and defense. He has hired for zero failed roles. He has built AI powered talent systems. He's obsessed with diversity sourcing. And for all the Harry Potter lovers out there, you'd be happy to know that he is a Hufflepuff in the streets and a Ravenclaw in the spreadsheet. But today we're going to be talking about something different, uncomfortable. How aimlessly and blindly climbing that career ladder is going to cost you clarity, capability, and peace. So with that, hi Leo, welcome to Bookshelf to Boardroom.
Thank you, yeah, excited to be here.
Thank you. And before we dive deep in, I have to ask you, your LinkedIn says one of your top skills, strengths is ghosts. What does that even mean?
Oh man, okay, wow. Really good question. So the reason I have this is for a couple of reasons. Firstly, to see, has someone actually read my LinkedIn profile?
Okay.
So, well done.
Okay.
The other reason is kind of a vibe check with employers. Like if an employer sees that, and it's like, oh, that seems really unprofessional.
Yeah.
I'm not going to want to work there. Because if someone's like, oh, a bit of humour isn't a bad thing for us, I'm not going to fit in. And so I keep it on there as something kind of weird that, they can be like, oh, okay, like that's really cool. Or they can say, oh, it's really unprofessional.
That is so smart. I actually did not think of something like that. And for the viewers, if you go and check out Leo's LinkedIn profile, you will see a lot of personality there, which I think is fabulous.
I mean, I have some other stuff on there that's also completely fake. And the idea is, if someone's viewing my profile, I want them to actually read it.
Okay.
So for example, there's an experience that's completely made up, and there is also a volunteering. And I'm really upfront when you actually read it. It literally says this is not real.
Okay, so
So
you're openly giving everyone a challenge to be more sincere and actually give it to read.
I mean, it's more of a challenge to recruiters to be like, when you see a LinkedIn profile, read it. Don't just sort of look for keywords. Like actually see what it's saying.
Awesome. So taking notes, all of you. And I know I introduced yourself, but for our audience to connect with you better, is there something you'd like to say about yourself? Maybe introduce yourself in 3 words or anything that you'd like to say.
3 words? Wow, your question. I saw the questions you'd sent. They're really, really good. So I had to really, really prepare for this. 3 words. Oh my goodness. Let's say Papa, recruiter, wannabe pilot.
Wannabe
so
pilot.
4,
but and congratulations, I know you're a new dad.
Well, yeah, I mean, so I've got 2. The paternity leave I took was for my youngest. She's now turned 2, and you have to use it before that. But
Okay. Awesome. All right, so now it's time to dive deep into our podcast, and we will start with our segment number 1.
I'm ready.
Which is designing your career. And for our audience, we know some of us are inherently living this script, right? That has sometimes explicitly told to us, and sometimes we just see it around and we just start following it, which is you start your job, you get promoted, you are an individual contributor, then you become a manager, you're managing people. Then you move up, you start managing managers. Then you move up even more and you start managing enterprises. And when I was having the introductory call with Leo, he talked about something that was completely different than that, where he said growth need not be just upwards. And I'd like you to elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think what's really interesting is, as a recruiter, we're often recruiting for like leadership roles and management roles, where you're going to be leading a team, but you're actually going to be responsible for the success of that team and the welfare of those people on the team. And it's a really serious role. Like it can be really painful, it can be really great, but it's a lot of responsibility. And I think there, at least in the past, has been a real sort of feeling that like the only way to progress in your career is to eventually get to a manager level. And there are some people who don't want that. Like what they want to do is get really, really senior in doing kind of one specific thing. They don't necessarily want to lead people. They want to become the absolute best at, for example, in development, you might want to become like the expert in the company in a certain framework or in a certain process. But I think there's a real sort of feeling, that you sort of have to eventually take a management role to do that. And I think a lot of people then sort of feel that the only way to move forwards is to start managing people. And I think there are a lot. And when we're recruiting for, like team lead roles, one of the things we want to dive into is like, hey, have you actually thought about what it means to manage a team? Like, have you thought about what it's like to fire someone? Or put someone on PIP. Have you thought about what it's like to, have someone who gets demotivated and have to actually say, what do you need? Not, okay, let's get rid of you, but saying actually like, hey, like, what do you need? What can we do? And kind of analyze your own failings.
True. So there are two things. One is depth. The other is breadth. We talked about depth a little bit when we are saying you go really to the core of what you do, understand, say frameworks that you're working with, or maybe a language that you code in. And my interpretation of what you just said is, it does not mean that you stay stuck where you are or just not experience new things. You could be going this way. You could also be going this way, which is like going deeper in what you're doing before, you take up a little more. The other thing I caught from what you were mentioning, where you were talking about tough conversations like firing someone or taking a leadership role, also means taking ownership of and responsibility for the other person's career growth. And when we're thinking about promotion or we're thinking about our career growth, we have to think about, are we ready for the other narrow aspects of leadership that come with it. But have you ever stepped back or taken a pause, or hey, I consciously am going deeper, or hey, I'm consciously stepping back because for my long-term growth or my long-term career, this seems like a right choice?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in my current company, let's say, when I joined, I took a more junior role because my youngest had just been born, and I wanted to make sure I had enough time to actually be with my family. And so I said, actually, I'm really quite senior, but I'm going to take a more junior role so that I have the bandwidth, so the expectations are less on me. And then what I've done since then is basically being able to get to move up, in the seniorities.
Got it.
Now that, let's say, my daughter, she's like, my youngest is daycare now, so I have more time. And availability. Yeah. In other roles, I've absolutely taken, let's say, individual contributor roles rather than lead roles. Because that's kind of what I'm interested in. Like, the way I've done it is I've looked at kind of what the company's doing, and I've looked at what the function that I'm going to be joining is doing, and I've said essentially, what am I actually interested in? Like, what am I going to stay sort of motivated by? And sometimes it's been, hey, like, you're going to own this function or this process, like you can like manage the referral process, for example. And sometimes it's been like, hey, you're going to actually recruit just for this one team. But that one team I'm like fascinated by. And I think, and so absolutely, there have been times when I could have gone upwards, but I've kind of gone sideways, let's say.
But when you're talking about this, it just feels so easy, like, you know what you want, you know what you're having fun with, and you want to be there. But for others who may feel that social pressure of, their friends getting promoted or their family looking down at them and being like, hey, you're still there? How do you explain it to them, or how do you kind of fight that?
Yeah, I mean, no, and this is it. It's really easy for me because I can say like, hey, I'm doing what I want. I'm doing this is for me. And obviously there are other people, as you say, like their families may have really big expectations, and you feel the need to do that. At the end of the day, I think you need to decide what's important. And if you say, hey, actually, my family expectations are more important, that's where you go. And that's not a bad decision as long as you've made it. I think that's the key thing. I know a lot of people who, essentially, if you don't make a decision, it will be made for you. True. Basically. And I think there are quite a few, people I've seen, whether in like the recruitment side or sort of in the candidate side, who have sort of been swept along by either sort of, this is kind of just where I have to go, or this is what my family expects, or this is what someone told me a few years ago is the way, without sort of deciding if they actually want it. you know. And I think, you know, and so when you're looking at this stuff, it's not easy.
Yeah.
Like I've had to have some quite deep conversations with myself about like, what do I actually want? Because, you know, when you know, like for example, when you have kids, there are more expectations. Like you suddenly need to be more financially stable.
More responsible.
Yeah. And one easy way to do that is just to move up because more money, right? But if that's not going to motivate you, if you're going to burn out, if you're going to drop out because of that, that's not the way to actually guarantee that. And so you need to understand what you actually want. And it's not always the most obvious path.
Yeah. And so I think your thought process is more like a regret minimization framework. And the reason I'm saying this is because if I am making a choice, what he started with saying was, you have to first decide what you want. If family is your priority, like, you know, keeping and what their expectations are, managing those expectations, you go with that. Being happy with yourself, your own choices, and taking that control is your priority, you'd go with that. But first identify that, because then there will always be grass being brighter on the other side, and there'll be times when you're questioning your own decisions and falling in that loop of just, you know, contemplating on where did you go wrong. And if you consciously start, like you said, you have to do some deep reflections. You're more comfortable with where you are and what choices you're making. I mean,
as an example, like when I was working in consultancy, I really enjoy consultancy because it's really fast paced and stuff changes all the time, which I love. The problem I had was that I came across a company that I was like really invested in. I loved the mission, their product was cool, their culture seemed really good. And they actually reached out to me and like they offered me a role. I talked to them and they're like, do you want to join us?
Yeah.
And it was really difficult because in my current role, I was really happy.
Yeah.
You know, amazing manager, a lot of flexibility. You know, I'd just become a parent, and he was like, if you need to take time off for the kids, just do it. Like, I trust you.
Wow.
But there was this other role that was more structured, a bit more, not corporate, but, you know, more, you know, I'd be reporting to an actual manager and a team and all that sort of stuff. And I had to sort of say, actually, what's going to keep me going? Like, am I going to regret not taking this opportunity more than I'm going to regret, like sort of going for what I'm genuinely happy with. Yeah. And I think when you put it as sort of like regret minimization.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly it. In a way, that's the way that I've kind of done this. Not sort of, in a way, it's sort of minimizing regrets rather than sort of maximizing happiness, if that makes sense.
Does. And a lot of your answers are actually taking us to this one word, self-awareness. So when this segment is called Designing Your Career, and it all starts with self-awareness.
I get that.
One last question that I'd like to touch on before we move forward. Let's imagine nobody listened to us and what we're saying right now, and they went ahead, got that role or that promotion that they were not ready for, not fit for, didn't even want. And now they're in it.
Yeah.
Have you seen what usually happens after that if you take something that you're not ready for, not fit for?
I mean, yeah, essentially, in my experience, there's two outcomes.
Okay.
Either you can adapt to it, and you'll learn how to manage it. You'll actually realize that it's something you can do. It's something that is going to work for you, and you can actually really succeed in it. Or you're going to find that it just doesn't, it's not something you enjoy. And I've been in roles where, or let's say I've recruited for roles where I just can't get interested in it. My brain just says no.
Freezing.
Yeah, and it might be that you take that role and you're just that's just not who you are. Your brain can't get your head around it, and that's, in a way, there's no judgment in that. You don't know until you take it. But what that means is you're probably going to leave that role, whether voluntarily, or you're going to get fired. It sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, so I'd say those are the sort of, that, in a way, it's kind of a binary in my experience.
And I'd like to share my experience here.
Yeah.
So I did take a role that I thought was super fancy. It's just like something I need to have on my CV, and it's just, going to get me places. And I realized we spend so much of our time at work, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not happy with the kind of role or the kind of people you choose, because people is also very important, the kind of team you choose, it seeps out in other areas of your life.
Bingo.
And because you're doing it day in, day out, 5 days a week, it's going to start impacting you.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, you either get fired, again, it's a blow on your morale, on, oh my God, am I not a good employee? Or you leave it yourself, and all the plans that you'd made in your head that this is going to take you, it's again, falling down. So again, moral of the story, self-awareness, being true to what you really want and not what's going to look fancy for others and what's going to make you popular on LinkedIn.
I mean, 'cause I know as well, like there is, like when LinkedIn, you see a lot of people who are like, oh, ex Meta, ex Instagram, that sort of thing. And I think a few years ago that used to be really important, because what a lot of people would do is kind of shop for brand names.
Yeah.
You know, they'd be like, oh, well, they work for Meta, you know, they must be very good. And I think kind of what we're seeing now is actually people going, okay, but is that actually going to work for us? Like, yes, you've managed a 500-person team across the world. Our team is 4. Like, are you actually able to sort of scale down your ambitions?
Yeah.
You know, is that going to work? And I think, as you say, like sort of chasing kind of like the title or the position or the company, it can work. But I think, again, is that actually what you want? Or is it, you know, as you say, is it the people? Is it the culture? Is it like the way of working is that kind of what you actually need?
Yeah. All right. A lot of deep talks, and in this podcast we're going to keep switching it up.
Good.
So it's time for a fun game now.
Ooh, okay.
We call it the Career Compass, and we'll be sharing situations that some of our audience members may have been going through or gone through, and you help them out.
Okay.
So you're the savior.
Sounds good.
All right. Number 1, if there's someone who's feeling bored in their job, but it's a stable job, it pays well, but they're not learning at all.
Yeah.
What should they do next?
You need to think, but you need to look at your life situation and say, hey, if I take a risk and move somewhere else, because the market in Finland at least sucks at the moment. Okay. Like, if I take a risk, is that risk worth it? You know, like say, for example, I was joining another company and I get laid off during my probationary period. What's that going to mean for me if I've got family, if I've got kids, if I've got people who are dependent on, you know, if like I'm sending, for example, money home to my family, can I keep doing that, you know, if I take a risk? And I think, you know, and again, in a way, there's no sort of one answer to this, but it needs to be something that you're comfortable with. And I know people who've said, actually, like if they get bored, like myself, that's demotivating, and eventually my performance is going to go down. So I'm probably going to leave anyway. And so for me, when I get bored, that's a sign that I need to move on.
Yeah.
For other people, and again, there's no judgment here, that's actually a sign that, great, you've got a job that you can do, you can maintain that income, and you can kind of wait until there's something that you're actually interested in, rather than sort of taking something that's not what you have.
Got it. So one thing that I'm gathering from your response is, first have a fallback plan. If you don't have that,
I was going to say, yeah, I think if you've got something stable, make sure that you know, like say for example, your risk doesn't work out, what happens? Yeah. Do you have savings? Do you have, you know, is your partner earning enough to be able to cover for you while you're doing that, you know?
Correct. Okay. All right. So next one. We briefly discussed this, but let's talk a little bit more. All my friends are getting promoted. Yeah. I am trying hard, doing everything in my power, feel like I'm doing a great job, but still not getting the success that I want.
Ask for feedback. Like, there's clearly a reason why other people are moving and you're not. And it might be, it could be that there's something that you're missing, you know, that your boss is saying, hey, you're really good at your job, but for example, we want you to take more ownership of projects. We want you to take the lead in discussions. And kind of once we can see that, you know, then we can put you in front of this customer, or then we can put you in front of this stakeholder.
Yeah.
So in a way, first of all, ask. And it might not be a comfortable conversation. You know, I had previous roles, I've had a conversation where I was like, why didn't I get this project? I really wanted to do this. And they're like, well, so, you know, you're clearly good at what you do, but we haven't seen that you can effectively say no to stakeholders. And this stakeholder is really demanding. And the only way that you're going to succeed there is by actually saying to them, hey, we can do A, we can't do B. And so we need to see that you can do that. And so what I did was I went away, and so I didn't sort of go away and just say no to people, just, you know, like, just on principle, but I was much more upfront with my stakeholders. And what they were then able to do is they were then able to give feedback to my manager, who they say, actually, hey, Leo's, he's actually started being really upfront. He started actually challenging me, not needlessly, but like, hey, why do we need this? Is this thing actually essential in this role? And then what they were able to do is say, well, actually, now that we've seen that you can do, you know, the thing that we were worried about, yeah, let's give you this other project. Let's see how, you know, let's try it out. And so I would always I think if you're seeing other people getting things you want, ask for feedback, whether it's your manager, whether it's your team member, because they will be able to say at least something. I mean, I think if if you ask for feedback and don't get it, that's a whole other it's a whole other issue. Like for me, that's a reason to move on personally. Like if someone's not giving me feedback, I'm like, off I go. That's not good.
And Leo, there's this concept called Johari window. Have you heard of it?
No.
So when you were talking about feedback and essentially getting feedback, say from our team members or our managers, because they may be telling us something that we don't know.
Yeah.
We maybe are thinking, hey, I'm doing so well in this presentation I'm doing, but what if they're looking at something from a strategy side that you're not good at? So what Johari window is about, it has 4 quadrants. What you know about you and others know about you.
Yeah.
Which is where most of us are, that hey, I know this. What others know about you, but you don't know about yourself, which is where you get the feedback.
Yeah.
And then there is what you know about yourself, but others don't know about you. Ooh. So maybe there's a skill that you have, you're really good at it, but until you start demonstrating it, they're not going to know.
Yeah. So I mean, that final window, kind of what you know about yourself that others don't know, the amount of screenings I've had with candidates.
Yeah.
Where throughout the screening, my feedback to the hiring manager would have been, I mean, they're probably qualified. They're not exceptional, but they can probably do the role just fine. And in the last few minutes, they say, oh, by the way, I don't know if it's relevant, and they drop some experience, and I'm like,
you should have been talking about this all along.
I was like, and sometimes I'll say do you have a hard stop? Because what you've just said actually changes the whole screening.
Wow.
I'm like, actually, that is really interesting. For this role, that's essential, and I want to dive into that.
Yeah.
And I think in a way that quite a lot of the time that's kind of what you're missing. Something you can do that you can do, but no one else has seen yet.
Okay. And finally, the last one is you don't know about yourself and others don't know about yourself, where we go into the core self-reflection era. Meditation may be the way to go for those. All right, so moving forward, there's someone who dislikes their work, absolutely hates it, but there are bills to pay and there are responsibilities, there's a lifestyle you have, and we briefly talked about this in the first question, but the reason I wanted to dive deeper into this is to focus on the lifestyle aspect. So when we get a good job, better pay, we instantly increase our lifestyle as well, and things we could have done without, but now it just seems like inevitable. We have to, get this, have that. How do you think people should manage that when we have to kind of put that down and focus more on growth that's going to give us long-term happiness?
Do you mean how to manage essentially the lifestyle creep is what you're talking about? Or what to do in a situation where you're sort of essentially unhappy in your role, but it's paying the job? Because those are two, to my mind, those are two separate things. I'm happy to talk about both.
I want to talk about the first one, where the things that you're holding on to are not really the ones that you need. Because in the first question, we talked about responsibilities. We have to send money back to our parents or family. That's something you have to do. Yeah. But this second thing is when, you have built a lifestyle for yourself, which you can live without, but you're just not ready to.
I mean, and again, in a way, you need to decide sort of, is that actually working for you? It might be say for example, you get a pay rise and you think, actually, I'm going to subscribe to this other streaming service. I've got Netflix, I'll get Disney Plus. Just as an example, right? Yeah. You do need to sort of, again, it's quite a kind of critical analysis, but is that actually working for you? Does that bring you, essentially, is it worth the money? Could that money be better saved and put in a savings account, invested? Would that money be better spent on a course, or a certification, that sort of thing? Is that, and what this means is that you do need to know where, not specifically where you want to go, but your general heading. Because say for example, you're saying, hey, I want to move into this leadership role, but it requires certain qualifications, and you can't get into that role without them. Then those qualifications become kind of a hard requirement for moving. Yeah. And so you need to then look at kind of what you're basically spending on, and say, is this more important essentially to my sort of health? Is it more important that, to sort of maintain what I have or to move on? And I think both are absolutely valid. Like if someone says, actually, no, yeah, I want to be a manager with, one day, but at the moment I'm not there. Yeah. I think that's really brave to say that. And I think, someone saying, actually, this is where I want to go, I'm going to cut back in this area, I think it's equally brave, but it needs to be your decision.
Got it. Yeah. All right. Last one. There's someone who's trying to find a job. It's been over a year. We've already talked about how amazing Finland's market is at the moment. They've tried modifying their CV to the role. They have curated their cover letters. They have called hiring managers. They've attended all networking events.
Yeah.
What do they do now? They're on a brink of giving up, right?
No, I get it. In a way, there's not much you can do. I mean, you can always reach out to more people. I think the problem that a lot of job seekers have is they've got too much data. You don't know what to do with it all. You as an example, you might go to like the career club, and do that, and they say, hey, you need to do this with your CV, and then you reach out to recruiters, and they say, oh, well, I mean, you could. There's this other way of doing it, and then you look at LinkedIn, and LinkedIn's like, no, there's this other way, and you end up with just huge amounts of data.
Confusion, yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the difficulties I think a lot of job seekers who I work with have is that they don't necessarily know what they want to do, because a lot of them will reach out to me and they'll say, hey, do you have any jobs available? And I'm like, here's our careers site. Like my role as a recruiter is not, I always get this wrong, my role as a recruiter is to find candidates for roles, not roles for candidates. And the reason I bring this up is that when someone reaches out to me, like someone did yesterday actually, the candidate reached out to me and said, hey, I've got all this experience, I've actually moved into like cybersecurity, I want, do you have any security intern roles? And I was like, actually, yeah, we do. I'll pass your profile to the recruiter, and actually I think they're now moving forwards in the process.
Wow.
But it's because they were really specific about what they wanted. And I think, say from my experience, a lot of job seekers, they're sort of saying, well, and I'll say to them like, what do you want to do? And they're like, oh, anything, I just need a job. And I'm like, well, okay. I mean, I can coach you into, what we can do is we can find a job that you're quite likely to get. I don't think it's going to be the one that you're interested in now. Mm-hmm. And the example I use is cleaning, not because it's easy, it's really tough. And you need to be really clever to do cleaning. You need to be very resilient. You need to be very good at problem solving. All the things you need in a more corporate job, but it's something with a lower threshold to get in.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes what I do is I say, well, if you need a job, let me coach you to that. And that's when people turn around and say, oh, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. I want to work in marketing. And I'm like, okay, great.
Now you know.
That. And I think, it's really, the market sucks. It's awful. We're at 10 point something % unemployment. We've like highest in Europe, right?
Sure.
And I think, understandably, people are saying, well, I want to work in, software development. I'm not going to be able to do that. Maybe I should start applying to, like technical support roles. So I should sort of broaden my options. And I completely understand that. But I think what you need to do is you need to own it. You need to say, actually, if I'm applying to a technical support role, the stuff I'm sending needs to be sort of really tailored towards that.
Yes.
Because what we're seeing is, at least what I'm seeing, is people applying to like technical support roles, but with the materials they'd use to apply for a development role. And while there's clearly relevant stuff there, they have experience that is similar, they're up against people who are saying, actually, I've been doing this, I too am a developer, I want a technical support role, and here's exactly how I can add value. And I say, it is really rough. And in a way, all you can kind of do is, if you like Finding Nemo, right, Dory, just keep swimming. Sometimes that's all you can do, but if you know where you want to go, and and it doesn't have to be a specific role, but a direction, if you know kind of the function that you want to work in a company, you can much more target stuff.
Wow. And that perfectly summarizes this segment also, because you have to design your career with intentionality. What Leo was talking about also, having a role or having any role are two different things.
Yeah.
And even though it's getting difficult staying in the first lane, you gotta find Nemo. You gotta keep swimming. Yeah.
I mean, what's interesting is if you look at my career, like I like being a recruiter. I like talking to experts all day, because that's what being a recruiter is. It's just having conversations with people who are far more intelligent than you about something really interesting. But if you look at my career, I've bounced around the industries. I haven't sort of said, oh, I'm going to only work in like defense, or I'm only going to work in SaaS. Yeah. I started in home services. I went into consulting, cyber, automotive. I'm now in defense. But I've known that I wanted to be a recruiter, because I realized that I actually really enjoyed the job. And so for me, it's like my calling is being a recruiter, but I don't particularly care where I am. I don't have a sort of like a hard industry I want to be in, if that makes sense.
It does. And once you know your calling, or you know what you're passionate about, the second thing is start building deeper skills or capability in that, and it's easier because you have fun there, so building yourself up there is easy. So that brings us to our segment number 2, which is building capabilities. And we're going to be talking about 2 things. One is what differentiates perceived competence from real capability.
Oh yeah, good question.
And the second is getting interviews, or getting almost there to getting hired, or getting that leap forward.
I get it.
So the first question that we'd like to start is, are there any skills or behavior that instantly stand out to recruiters that people should absolutely start building?
In my experience, curiosity. Like, I've never worked at a company where that hasn't valued people who are super curious. Like, you need to be interested in what's happening and why it's happening.
Okay.
Like that kind of underlines everything. Because if you're curious, you're going to want to know why there are problems. You're going to want to know what those problems are, what's causing them, and you're going to want to know how to fix them.
Yeah.
And that is value for a company. You're going to want to know, if you're in sales, for example, what's the bottleneck? How do you anticipate making more revenue? How can I be a part of that?
And will having the art of asking better questions help with curiosity?
It will. I think a lot of people get stuck in the idea of you need to ask questions. And I think the other side of it is that you need to be able to listen.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of candidates who say, oh, I've got 100 questions. And I say, okay, great, amazing. And a lot of the questions, for example, have been answered either by stuff I've already discussed, or they're in the job description, or there's information that's, say, publicly available. And in a way, you're kind of using up really valuable time with stuff to get answers to stuff that's already there.
Yeah.
And so I think, absolutely be curious, but curiosity is also listening. Saying, hey, I'm going to ask this question, for example, what bottlenecks are there in the process? Hearing the answer and then being able to say, actually, this part of the answer is really interesting, I've done that. And then being able to sort of dive into that bit with questions. I think that's the key bit.
That's the key bit. I love that you brought up listening. Can we dive deeper into this? How can someone build the listening skill?
You have to be interested in what's being discussed. And in a way, it's quite a good test, I think, for whether a company is going to work for you. Because, a lot of the time when you talk with a recruiter, they'll give you a brief overview of the role and kind of what the company does. If you're listening to that and it's being this is really cool, I'm really excited, and you're sort of feeling excited about it, you're feeling motivated, it's going to be much easier to ask relevant questions because you're excited. If you're listening to that and sort of thinking, fine.
Yeah.
And I've had that. I had an interview with a company once where I was excited about the company and the way they described it. I just came out of the interview being like, I'm bored. And there's no disrespect to the company, but it just didn't interest me. The questions I asked were really boring. I couldn't think of anything interesting. And so I think to ask better questions, in a way, you do need to be interested in what's happening. For example, with journalists will often specialize. You have political journalists or economic journalists. And the reason they do that is because that's what they're interested in.
Yeah.
And that's why they ask good questions.
And one way to spark this curiosity and to be interested in different topics, can be reading about a lot of new things, because when you're just focused and only hearing, listening, talking about just one thing, it may be difficult to be open to other ideas, other concepts, other topics as well, right?
Yeah, potentially, absolutely. I mean, I think, if you can read around the subject, you're going to find stuff that's, hopefully, find stuff that's interesting to you,
Okay, so maybe reading is one way to go. And the inevitable. How can people develop better skills using AI?
Oh man, trying stuff out, like breaking stuff, basically. Like, the way I've done it is, I mean, so I think there's two parts to this. Firstly, you need to be able to just try stuff. I think a lot of people are worried that, I don't have like a perfect idea, or I don't sort of know how, like, what if I do it and it's wrong? What if the result I get is bad?
Yeah.
Well, that's really good data. It means you need to try something else. And so, like some of the stuff, like I've done, for example, I've seen like prompts on LinkedIn where they're like, put your CV into ChatGPT with this prompt, and it'll revolutionize it. And I'm like, okay, let's try it. And I try it, and some of the prompts are really good. Like there's one I actually used to improve my CV, because I'm like, actually, this is golden. And some of the stuff's terrible. And with the terrible stuff, I'm like, okay, but how can I make this good? Like, if I was trying to improve this, what would I do?
Yeah.
The other side, though, is that, like, if you have an actual business case or a use case for it, that's going to really focus what you're doing. And so, for example, in my role, what I'm doing at the moment is testing a lot of AI tools, whether it's sourcing stuff, whether it's like security stuff, that sort of things. But it's all within, is this going to add value to our recruitment team? Is this going to actually speed us up? Is it going to make us more efficient? What's the value add? And so when I'm testing and I get a result and I'm like, well, that's not very good. Yeah. My thought is, okay, can I make it work?
Okay.
Not is this good or bad, but like, is it like, where's the inefficiency here? But I think it does come down to just practicing
and trying.
Because the people who are posting on LinkedIn saying, hey, here are like 10 prompts that you can use, they haven't just come up with those out of thin air. They've likely tested them. They've iterated a bunch of times, and that's kind of why they're able to say that. The people who are working, at the very high levels of like OpenAI, they didn't just walk into these roles. They've been testing stuff. They've been breaking stuff, and I think they've been assuming that they don't know everything. And so when they go to it, they're curious and they're saying, well, why does this work? Why doesn't it work?
True. So trying and not having an approach where, hey, this is the best way to go about this, these are the best prompts, or this is the best tool, and this is what I'm going to stick with. But be more open to exploring and trying. Yeah, that kind of links it back to the curiosity.
Yeah, exactly. Like trying.
We talked about.
I mean, I had one thing where I put the prompt in, and I'm trying to remember what I'm allowed to say here. Because at work we have a sandbox for our LLMs, because there's certain information we're just not allowed to talk about. Yeah. And I put a prompt in and it came back being like, I'm not allowed to like that.
Disclose this,
can't do that. And I was like, okay, great, I've actually broken something. But this is a really good learning. Okay, I've actually found like the edge of this.
Which is great. Okay. Yeah. One more thing that you originally talked about was you try to explain to others that what you do is find the candidate for the role and not the role for the candidate. Did I get it right? Or did I say it opposite?
I think it's quite confusing. No, this is it. I keep forgetting it. So the role of basically the point of a recruiter is to find candidates for the roles. We are given a role. We're given a role by the hiring manager.
And then you
bring me candidates.
So, what is it that's most misunderstood about the hiring process, and is AI changing hiring? We already talked a little bit about it.
I mean, AI is clearly changing hiring for better or for worse. Okay. I think one of the most misunderstood things is that like AI is not rejecting you. People are rejecting you. It's just AI is not rejecting you. There are a lot of tools that recruiters use. There are ATSs that, for example, will put a rank on candidates, based on the job description. There are some that will, do various things. But at the end of the day, a person still needs to actually decide what to do with those candidates. And some recruiters will say, well, if the ATS has said, that the score is less than 50, I'm going to reject them. That's not AI doing it. That's a person not doing their job. Like, that's a lazy recruiter. But, and I'm really upfront about this because it makes me really angry when you have people who are working with other people's livelihoods and essentially not taking it seriously. And I think it's a big misconception, but I also understand why people think this, because there's a huge amount of misinformation out there. There's a lot of people, I think, trying to sell, their solution to this. And the way that they can sell it is by saying, oh, AI is rejecting you, here's how to get past it. And actually, if it turns out AI isn't rejecting you, they don't have any money to make. It sucks.
But one more thing that's kind of adding to this is, because the job market is so bad, there are so many rejections that a person gets that after a point they tend to think that there's nothing wrong in what I'm presenting, so it must not be reaching the...
No, this is it. I mean, and the other problem we have is that the job market, again, I keep saying it sucks. It's awful. I like the amount of sympathy I have for job seekers I can't even express. And the problem is that because there are so many more people applying for an even smaller number of roles, the competition becomes crazy. And you have, I had a role that I opened up overnight. I had 300 applications. I had to close the role temporarily because otherwise I won't be able to get through it. Because I read every application I get, and I'm going to go through it. And I had to then, I had to close it temporarily, go through those 300, see how many people we could actually move forwards with. Do we have sort of enough? And enough is it's badly defined. Like, I sort of feel if I've got 10 people to talk to, that's probably enough for the first round, and because, if I talk with 10 people, 7 or 8 will get through to the hiring manager, then it could be sort of half of them will move forwards in the process. But there's a lot of guesswork. And then if that doesn't work out, then I'll reopen the role and say, well, actually, okay, now we have pipeline for more applications. Because again, if someone's dedicated time to writing an application or tailoring their CV, I want to read it.
They deserve the time.
But I also want to make sure that I actually have the time to do that.
True.
Yeah.
Wow, very deep conversation, and like I promised, we're going to keep switching gears.
This is good.
Time for another fun game.
Ooh.
This one is called What Would Leo Do Next?
Ooh.
Okay. We're going to be stepping inside your brain, and the first one is, if you're a hiring manager, and there's this candidate who has hyped up the skills and experiences, and the reason you're figuring this out is because of the gaps you're seeing in the interview. What do you do next?
As a hiring manager, I'm probably not going to move forwards with them because, so let's say someone has come to a recruitment process and said, I'm a top performer and I've got all of these metrics, and I've nailed this, and it turns out none of that's accurate. It's difficult to know what to believe. You're like, okay, great, maybe some of it's true, but I don't understand what's true. And I can't move forwards on the basis that some of it might be true. As a hiring manager, I'm probably going to go to the recruiter and say, okay, look, we had this misalignment here. In your screenings, I need you to dive deeper into, for example, like how these results were achieved. And if you're not getting an answer that makes sense, don't move forwards. As in, don't send me people who you don't feel confident in. Because it's very common for people to be able to say, hey, I've done this. And then I'll say to them, okay, great. Pick one example. Talk me through your process. How did you do it? Like, you got, for example, in sales, like, you got like 110% of your monthly quota month on month for a year. That's amazing. How did you do it? And sometimes they're like, hey, I did this, A, B, I did step A, step B, step C, and this is why I can do it again. And those are the candidates that are going to fly through the process because they've got the results and they can explain why it's worth it. The candidates who are going to fall at the process, the ones who either aren't being super accurate about their results, or who just can't explain it. Maybe they had the result, but they don't know why it happened. And the reason that they won't move forwards is that we don't feel that you can do it again. Is it sort of just a fluke?
So I think a tip for me and everyone else is, don't just put something on your CV because you think it looks powerful, it looks fancy, impactful, but put something that you can follow through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, what I always recommend is to put results on your CV. Like that's what is actually going to help move the needle for me, at least. If someone says, "Oh, I managed recruitment processes," or rather, I owned recruitment processes at this company, and it was really fast paced.
Yeah.
Okay. If someone says, "I managed 15 recruitment processes in parallel," that's the bit, because firstly, you're clearly used to that volume. Secondly, in parallel, that's fast paced.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to make me say, actually, I'm going to move forward with that candidate.
That's very helpful.
And then my question is going to be, great, how do you manage 15? How do you manage it? Like,
and then,
talk me through it.
You have to have a answer.
Yeah.
If there is a candidate who's changing, you observe in their CV, they're changing jobs every 12 to 18 months.
Yeah.
But they've been great everywhere.
Yeah.
What do you do?
I mean, from my perspective, as a recruiter, I don't care. Great, there's a bunch of reasons that people move over 12 to 18, there's a bunch of reasons. Like if you look at my own like work history, I've done that because I've been laid off a bunch. I was really good at what I did, but layoffs aren't based on performance. Some candidates will move around to increase their salary. To me, I'm like absolutely fine. What I will talk with the hiring manager about there is say, look, if there's a candidate who has been doing this, is that someone we want? For example, if this person were to stay in the role for 12 to 18 months, is that going to work for you? Or is it sort of, are we looking for someone who's actually going to be more, going to be here like much more long term? Both are right, valid, but it depends what the person wants. And so if the hiring manager says, actually, if they don't last 2 years, fine. They're going to be attached to this project, and after the project we'll move them somewhere else. Yeah. Then I can be like, okay, that's not an issue. If if we say actually what we're looking for at this role is someone who's going to be here for like 4 or 5 years, what I'll do is I'll talk with the candidate and say, just to be super upfront, this is what we're looking for. What this means is that this will be your role for 4 to 5 years. You might not be able to move on that quickly. There might not be that career progression intentionally. We want to be upfront about that. And sometimes some candidates will say, actually, that's absolutely fine. I've jumped around enough. I want something more stable. And some will say, actually, the reason I'm moving around is because I want to move up.
Yeah. So having that openness with the candidate itself.
I'm super upfront with candidates about roles. I've said to candidates sometimes, I'm like, look, this is not a chill role. This is a really stressful role you'll be joining. Are you into that?
True. Okay. And final one.
Yep.
Someone who's technically brilliant, skill-wise, absolute perfect match, but team-wise, maybe not the best team player, maybe not the best in communicating clearly, maybe not the best in adjusting to the social situations at work. What do you do?
So I think there's a couple of different things that you've mentioned. They're both really important. The first one is there are a lot of people who are absolutely brilliant who cannot explain what they do. They have a really deep understanding of their subjects. There are some developers who work, for example, in forensic security, which is where you're diving really deeply into sort of kernels and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And when I try to say so what have you been doing? They can't give an easy to understand description.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's fine. Sometimes that's kind of what the hiring manager wants, but sometimes they're going to be in a role where they're going to be working with less technically minded stakeholders. And again, I think with candidates like that, I'll say to them this might be challenging for you, because what you're going to be able to do is explain this to me.
Yeah.
And if I can't understand it, neither will my stakeholder. The other side is someone who won't fit in with the team. And that is, there's a whole host of issues when hiring managers say this to me. Will they fit in with the team? And I push on hiring managers and I say, look, are you actually looking to evolve the team? Or, are you looking to sort of maintain what you have?
Okay.
And sometimes I'll say to hiring managers, do you have enough people who are challenging you? Is that your issue in the team? Or do you have lots of people who've got big ideas, which is great, and what you need is someone who can kind of be the quiet person who just gets stuff done? Because both are valid, but we need to know that from hiring managers. And so sometimes when someone is not it doesn't seem sort of super like team friendly in a way, that's not a bad thing if that's what the team needs.
Got it. And teams also go through a life cycle, right?
Yeah.
Like when a new project's being formed, there's storming where everyone has, then you slowly go to norming and everyone's coming at the same page and then you're thriving. So when you are hiring for someone, do you also look at where this project is or where this team is, and then depending upon that, the answer to this question might change?
Yeah, I mean, so if basically from my point of view, if it's important to the hiring manager, it's important to me. And I will sometimes say to the hiring manager, like, hey, like, is this, like, how's this project, like, how do you see this project going? If it's successful, is this person going to be working in the same role in a year, in 2 years? You know, and that sort of thing. And so, it's definitely something that I'm going to push the hiring manager on before I talk with candidates. And then when I talk with candidates, I can manage expectations with the hiring manager and be like, hey, this person actually is looking for stability.
Yeah.
Is that role going to do that for them? Is there like another role that you've got that actually might be better? You know, I mean, at the moment, I've got a few roles that are open, and there are some candidates who are officially in one role, but another role might actually be better fit for them, because either it's faster paced or it's going to just stay the same, or rather, you know, it's going to be doing the same thing, you know, for the next few years. And and this is what I'm talking to the hiring manager about, being like, hey, is candidate A better for this other role? Would you consider them? You know, because I don't want to lose people who are good.
Wow, awesome. So that was our game. Yep. We are now closer to our last segment 3.
Okay.
We've already spoken about world is brutal. You gotta stay strong.
Yep.
And which is a perfect segue to the segment 3 title, which is Powering Through Resilience Together.
Yes. Yeah.
And the first theme that we'd be talking about is, we've also talked about you and the high stakes environment you work in.
Yeah.
How do you stay resilient without burning out?
Really good question. So part of it is about working out what's actually important. I have hiring managers who come to me and say, hey, this is the most high priority role there is. You know, if we don't fill this, it's the end of the world. And I'm happy turning around to them being like, okay, what does that mean? Like, what is the end of the world? Is it like something gets delayed? Is it slightly uncomfortable for you? Because that's not great, but that's not quite the same as like a contract falling apart, or, you know, like a part of the business, you know, like not making money. That's actually sort of end of the world for the business. Yeah. And so part of it is, I think, being really upfront with people about what they actually mean when they say it's a priority, and like kind of what, you know, what's actually important. And you need to ask questions, you need to be curious, and you need to be able to push back. You need to be able to say, hey, okay, I hear you. You know, what you're doing is important. I have these other stakeholders as well, and what they're doing is of a higher priority. Either it's come from someone higher up in the leadership, or let's say the deal that they're working on is bigger, just in terms of money or size or scope. And I say, and so part of it is being able to, I say, understand what's actually important.
So you're analyzing it, and again, we'll use 4 quadrants here.
Yeah.
One is not urgent but important.
Yeah.
Urgent but important.
Yeah.
Not urgent, not important.
Yeah.
So asking questions and trying to understand what's urgent also, important also, and important meaning, in your case, say impact to the business, customer falling through, or our revenues not meeting the target, or things like that. Okay. And what do you tell to someone who doesn't really know the difference between when do we pause and when do we power through? Because sometimes pausing can also mean that you're afraid to take that leap. Sometimes pausing is important for you to not kind of fall through and then not even complete the race. So how do you decide that?
Yeah, I mean, this comes back to self-awareness. Like, I think the people who succeed have got a very good understanding of what they can do and what they can't do. And I've had hiring managers who come to me and said, hey, we need this, this, this. And what I've said is, look, I can help you with these 2 things. That third thing, 0 experience in. And I'm like, if that's what you want, my other colleague is probably actually the person to go to.
Wow.
You know, like for example, I had a role where we were looking for like an engineer, not my current role, a previous one. I said, they're looking for an engineer, and they're like, we need this specific language experience. That's what we need. And I was like, look, I've never recruited for this language. I say, if this is kind of your priority, I recommend you go to this other person. Like, they will get you the results that they want. And I think sort of being able to work out when to take a break and when to power through is about understanding what you can actually do. Because say, for example, someone comes to me and says, like, we've got some really difficult sourcing to do and we need it done quickly. Like, I love that. I can do that and I know I can power through. If someone says, actually, we've got, a bunch of like, we need to get all these stakeholders in a room and essentially get them to decide on strategy, that's something I'm going to say, okay, great. I'm going to need to take a pause before this because I need to work stuff out, But it's because I know what I can do.
But that also touches the point of art of saying no.
Yeah.
There are people who just cannot say no.
Yeah. I mean,
what do they do?
Yeah, I've worked with people like this, and I mean, with one of them, I wasn't managing them, but I was sort of, in a way, mentoring them. They were more junior than me and I was more senior. And at one point I was like, look, one time every day I want you to say no to me. I don't particularly care about what, but I want you to say no. If I'm saying, hey, do you want to go and get a coffee? I need you to practice just saying no.
That's so important, yeah.
But the problem is that if you can't say no, you're going to burn out really quickly. And also you're not going to learn what you actually can and can't do, because there have been times when I've said no to stuff and it's turned out that actually I could have done it, and that's also really frustrating. But I've learned. Like, for example, I said no to a project once. My manager was like, I'm disappointed to hear that. I actually thought you'd be really good at this, but I respect your decision in doing that. And it turns out the project would have been really good for me. And I'm like, oh. But I learned. I'm like, actually, okay, this is a situation where I could have done this. And there have been other things where I've said yes to something because it sounds really exciting, and I've gotten into it and I've been like, oh,
disaster.
This is. And again, you have to then decide, do I need to turn around and say, actually, hey, I misunderestimated this? Which I've also done. I've joined projects and turned around and been like, actually, I'm out of my head. Like, I'm out of my depth here. I can't do this. And so, But again, it's understanding what you can do, and the only way to do that is by trying both ways, taking on stuff, but also by saying no to stuff.
I love your hack, because for some people it's a nightmare to disappoint other people.
Yeah.
So this hack of finding an accountability partner that just helps you say no, maybe to trivial things, but just kind of getting into the habit.
Absolutely. I find that with people I work with who say no, I trust what they can do, because I trust that they'll say no if they can't do something. Whereas someone who says yes, I don't actually know what they can do.
True. Okay, final question of this segment. Diversity builds resilience. First of all, I'll let you share your thoughts on that. And the second part is, we talk a lot about diverse teams everywhere. Is it just for moral reasons, or is it strategically good as well?
Yeah, so diversity absolutely, does build resilience. And I think both your points are kind of linked, and so I'm going to be that really annoying person and discuss both of them at the same time. Okay. So you're not going to have two answers. Part of the reason I do believe in sort of diverse teams is that that's where you actually get success. You get clashings of ideas, you get clashings of understandings, you get people saying, actually, I worked this way in the past. And I think those are really important, not necessarily because you have to do something different, but you need to be able to consider another option. And I've had, one of the things I quite like doing is putting candidates who are very different than the current team in front of the hiring manager. So maybe the current team are full of people from a startup, and I put someone super corporate in front of them. It's going to be kind of awkward for the hiring manager because they're not used to that sort of thing. But that person is going to bring a lot of ideas that the team literally doesn't have.
Yeah.
If you have, for example, like a team like me, white males, and you put, what I will do is I'll put a bunch of, say females or other people who identify differently in front of the hiring manager, because it's important that they actually get that other perspective.
I agree. Yeah.
And the way that success happens, doesn't happen when everyone agrees. Success happens when you have difference. I mean, look at any company on earth, right? The reason that they succeed is because people disagree. You know, there are fights, there are disagreements, there are, you know, people storm out, you know, there are, you know, massive cultural differences. That's how success happens. And so, yes, there are a lot of moral reasons that, you know, we need to be better at integrating people into Finland. You know, like, everyone is equal, you know, and everyone deserves an equal chance. And part of the way that you do that is by saying, actually, I'm going to bring you a selection of candidates intentionally. Yeah. But also, if you actually want results, that's how you get there. Like, you know, if you look at all of the big companies in Finland, like the successful ones, they're not just Finnish people. You know, they're not just men. There's a whole wide selection of people. And I know there are, you know, if you go on LinkedIn, there are people being like, companies don't employ foreigners. Some don't. I mean, even like, and I use this as an example, Kone, for example. I mean, like the most Finnish of Finnish companies, right? They make lifts and they make them really well. They're also, like, they are employing foreigners. They are employing people who are not like the sort of people who were there when they started. And that, you know, that's partly why they're successful, because they're bringing in different ideas.
Yeah. Awesome. Wow. Again, we went deep, so time to switch things around. Are you ready for a rapid fire?
Yeah, well, yeah.
All right. Simple rules, quick question, quicker answers.
Okay.
The first one, best way to stand out in an interview?
Give results.
Oh. Red flag you never ignore in potential hires?
Disinterest.
Wow. Habit that changed your career?
Saying no.
If not actually I know the answer to this one. If not a recruiter, what would you be?
Helicopter pilot.
I knew it. Okay. Biggest hiring mistake?
Ooh, dang, that's a good question. Not pushing when I had a concern.
That's a deep one.
But
okay.
Can't answer any more than that.
Yes. Unfortunately. At this phase in your career, what do you prefer more, stability or growth? Stability being protecting, optimizing, growth meaning experimenting, expanding?
Growth.
A trait you always look for when hiring?
I mean, curiosity.
Again, I knew this one. We've talked a lot about designing career, building capability, resilience, a lot of fun games. But there's one question I have to ask you. If you were to zoom out 20 years into the future and you're looking back in your career, what would make you say, damn, that was a good career? Or what would make you regret it?
Basically, in 20 years, I want to be able to look my kids in the eye and be like, what I did helped people. Like, what I did actually genuinely benefited humanity. And because, like, that's what I've been doing with all my roles. It's stuff that actually helps people. I think in 20 years, if I were to look back and say, actually, I didn't do everything I could to do that, I'd feel really bad. Like, that would suck.
And so when you say help people, there are multiple ways of helping people. So would you like to elaborate more on, from your career point of view, help people find better roles, grow, have their own career trajectories, or is there something else that I'm not?
Yeah, I mean, so there are a few different streams here. Partly a lot of the stuff that I do is helping people on a very individual level. You know, I work directly with job seekers, you know, I sometimes, you know, review CVs, that sort of thing. I do a bunch of like volunteering at like the Career Club, you know, podcasts, that sort of stuff. I think on a broader level though, the jobs and the companies that I want to work for are the ones that have identified like say an issue with society or like a problem, and are trying to find a positive solution to that. You know, whether it's like when I was in home cleaning, what we were doing was we were finding a way to give people, to give people jobs, to give people that first role in Finland that, you know, that you can actually use as a springboard to something else, a role that's actually going to help other people. You know, when I worked in cyber, what they were doing was making people the solution to people problems, which I think is really inspiring, because you're actually teaching people how to solve their own problems. What we're doing at my current company is we're saying to, governments, hey, here's the data. Like for example, with like hurricane monitoring, we can quite literally say to a government, this is where it's probably going to go. We can potentially save lives. With our defence contracts, we can say actually, like, here is accurate data about what's going on. There's no bias with this. This is literally, our radar saying that, like, that is that.
Wow. Okay, so I hope our audience had an amazing time listening to all your wonderful insights. If there's someone who is still, even after listening to us chat a lot, still feeling stuck, still struggling to, get through that cliff that they're at, or feeling the pressure of being someone that they don't want to be, that they have to be, what's that one question they should ask themselves tonight?
What do you want?
Wow.
Like,
simple but powerful. What do you want? What do you really want? What do you want?
Yeah. Because I think from that, because again, and you can, there's a technique I learned when I was recruiting salespeople, which is, what do you want? Why? Why do you want that? And why do you want that? And kind of once you get to that third level, you've usually kind of got to the crux of your motivation. And I've done this with job seekers before, and sometimes it's been quite powerful. Because it is that sort of like, that's kind of like, once you understand like the base level of why you want something, it can be that you actually realize you want something else entirely, and that might help you. It might help you. Change strategy. It might be that you realize actually, this is exactly what I want, and it kind of gives you that renewed focus or that that renewed confidence in what you're doing.
You know what, Leo? This podcast has also given everyone a crash course in MBA, because what you just told was the 5 why framework, and we've covered so many of the things that I'd learned during my MBA days that I think this is like a double benefit for our audience. But thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did.
Always.
And for our audience, I hope this podcast gave you something to think about, something to reflect, and something to pause. Because growth actually is incomplete without reflection, and that's just movement. So if you know anyone who's either aimlessly trying to catch that next title, or struggling really hard, trying their best but not getting through, I'd recommend you share this podcast with them. And remember that real upgrade isn't a promotion. It is having better clarity, better capability, and having the courage to do something different. This is Bookshelf to Boardroom, where we don't just climb ladders, we create one. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you next time.